Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our quarterly Reuse Maine meeting. I'm going to share my screen. Um, Basically, I'm going to quickly walk through a couple slides, but first and foremost, just first, welcome to this quarterly meeting. Um, we shared a little bit of this before we hit record, but just to recap for anyone that's watching, Reuse Maine is hosting these quarterly meetings for the community to just share what we're up to, and have some guest speakers and get excited about reuse and all things Reuse Maine. And because Sydney and I were both in Paris at the Reuse Economy Expo 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, what is time? We thought it would be fun to share some of the reuse findings we had there, and some of the solutions that we saw. There were a lot of really exciting and exceptional reuse economy concepts going on in the country of France, and we are excited to bring those to this community. So that's what we will be spending a bulk of our time on. But we also have a couple high level recaps, and we'll have the opportunity for some open discussion about what excited folks about our sightseeing in Paris, our reuse sightseeing. Anywho, let's move right along. As everyone knows, we are Reuse Maine, and we exist to advance reuse throughout the Pine Tree State. I'm going to power through these guys. This is just for anyone that is less familiar with our organization. What we've been up to, I did want to take a quick moment to share that the Reuse Maine pilot is still going strong in Bath Bar Harbor and South Portland. We actually have a bit more inventory than is currently being used at the existing coffee shop. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this at our monthly work meeting, but I did want to put a brief call to action to this community as well. Currently, Maine is looking for something like 2 to 6 more coffee shops that are in the coastal Maine community, but don't have to be anymore in Bath, Bar Harbor, or South Portland. So I am eyeing the idea of expanding into Portland, since we didn't work to do any outreach to coffee shops here. And I think having a dense population of drop-off spots would be very beneficial. So we are on the hunt to find a couple more coffee shops to join us, but the pilot is going strong. We've hit, 1,000 returns as of, I think, this week. So already sidestepped 1,000 disposable cups in these 3 communities, which is just very exciting. So go team on all things there. Additionally, back in early May, Sydney and I helped with a bunch of other folks in the Reuse Maine community, hosted this workshop for Maine's commingling co-op that is being formed through the bottle bill. We shared our vision for what a robust reuse system would look like in Maine, and how they should be thinking about it through the funding that's becoming unlocked through the bottle bill, and a forthcoming needs assessment that the bottle bill also requires. I don't know if you have anything else you want to say on this, Sydney, but we had a great little workshop together and are excited to see where all of that context setting goes.
Yeah, I'll just add we do have a recording of that. So if any of
Yes,
you didn't receive that and want to watch it, let me know.
indeed. And then, embarrassing moment for Suze. Here's a nice photo of me. We recently pitched as part of our Top Gun Accelerator program at the Maine Entrepreneurs Summit. Got a lot of really positive feedback there, and nothing terribly action oriented to report out from that, other than we are thrilled to continue to share our mission with a broader coalition, and are hopeful that things will continue to grow from there. And without further ado, as I said, Sydney and I recently were in Paris at their Reuse Economy Expo, and it was very exciting. And we wanted to take most of this meeting just to give you guys a quick recap of all the things we saw, and learned and are excited to share back. And Sydney, I'm going to ask you to come off mute so that you can just chime in as we go because I
For
don't have
sure.
any exact goals for each of these photos so much as just tried to organize them. Um, so first I just want to say like this was a at the central reuse uh not reuse, sorry. The central pavilion in Paris for conferences. So it was in a very large space and it was clear that it was just covering a broad swath of the economy of goods. You can see on the right hand side that there was like a huge swath of different materials that were being offered in reusables and different retail solutions. And we were just excited to see the diversity of um, reuse solutions on the market and being explored in Paris. I also, Vital was offering coffee in reusables there, so you could actually drink out of reusables while you were perusing reusable solutions. It was all exciting to see.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Uh,
Oh yeah, is this Vital one? What material is that? I'm just curious of this Vital.
I believe it's a polypropylene. It is a plastic,
Polypropylene. Okay,
but
cool. I was just curious.
yes, a lot of durable plastic solutions. You can see this was like fry containers for Burger King. There were plenty of glass solutions as well, and then some secondary and tertiary packaging of like reusable pallets and pallet wraps, reusable containers for jars and things, and then a whole swath of food and retail solutions. These are cleaning and home good containers, stainless steel. So variety of materials being used and a wide variety of applications. And I put in these slides mainly to say Emmanuel Macron came to the expo, which felt like a big moment of like, oh wow, clearly the political system values this highly enough that it's exciting for and a worthy press moment for him to come to a sustainability conference, let alone a sustainability conference exclusively focused on reusable packaging, and that was pretty exciting as well.
You can barely see him in there, but he is there.
Yes, this is his face. Just basically, there was a huge press crowd around him, so I don't think any of us actually got close. But um, and Sydney, feel free to just chime in at any point.
Yeah, well, actually, if you want to go back one, I feel like another interesting thing about this is across these pictures, you can see both of the major packaging producer responsibility organizations that operate in France's packaging EPR system. And one of the reasons I was really there was for with my upstream hat on to just get a really strong sense of like how is reuse rolling out as part of these EPR programs. So we did speak with both of the PROs, Citeo, and I always forget the name of this other one. It's not that. That just says on the way to reuse. It's
Yeah,
something, so
reemploy
whatever
is
the other
the
one
word
is.
for reuse in France. And
Yeah. And it was really helpful to just have like conversations, sit down with them and see in a real concrete, like real life, tangible way, like what programs they are rolling out and how they're handling the reuse requirements.
indeed. And I will say, I think probably part of the energy and excitement in the room, undoubtedly, a lot of these solutions have come almost exclusively from the requirements that EPR has placed and the funding that EPR has set aside for reuse specifically. So
Mhm.
I do think there's a lot to be said about the policy enabling this kind of ecosystem. Even though I was just super jazzed to see like how thriving an ecosystem it was by the time we were arriving.
Yeah.
So Sydney and I did a tour. So I'm going to share you some photos of the tour, and I say tour, but basically it was a tour in the expo hall of like specific. They had picked out specific stalls for us to stop at, and it was a tour all about solutions for the retail environment. Um, I believe, again, talking about policy being enabling condition, I think that I don't know if it's the EPR law, Sydney, maybe you'd know, that sets aside 10% of grocery store floor plans need to be for bulk reuse or refill. I
It's a
believe it's,
separate law, but yeah,
oh,
it's
okay.
really fascinating and very specific. Like, Sue said they have to have 10% of their floor slash shelf space dedicated to bulk goods. Um,
Bulk or refill or reuse.
no,
I think
it's
no, it's
just
just bulk,
it's just refills.
bulk and refill.
Yeah. So there was a
So there
lot
were a
there
lot,
for that, like
a lot of
market.
like clearly money had been thrown at solving the unique logistical challenges of doing bulk sales in grocery stores. This was not your um super granola hippy dippy store that's selling things in bulk. They had fancy scales and smart systems for all of these things. And one of the first ones we saw, this is probably the least tech enabled, but basically, this company has an app built in for bulk distribution where you can scan a QR code after you've filled things up, and it shows you the nutritional information about the product. Might have like linked recipes, has information about like its consume by date and a variety of other intel, but basically trying to resolve the issue of the consumer going in and not having the nutritional information that they might have on a branded box. I think that was mostly the solution of this guy. Anything else there, Sid?
No, I think that's right. Yeah, they were billing it as like with our app, you can get more information about the product than in a different
Mm-hmm.
way.
And then the grocery store would get more information about sales, I think, or there was some dual data sharing in some capacity. Uh, this was another cool bulk dispenser that Sydney and I really enjoyed. So
Yeah,
this is
this was
both
my
a.
favorite one. I was geeking out about this one.
Do you want to describe it then?
Okay, so it's a refill machine. Right now they're in pilot phase, so they're only working with like three brands. So they didn't have a wide variety of products. It was basically just like coffee. But as you can see on the right, there is a durable plastic container that you use for the refills that's actually returnable, reusable packaging. So the consumer doesn't own that container right now. They're talking about that. But right now, the way it works is I would take that container, I would get a clean one in the store, I would slot it into the machine in like dedicated slots where Suze's like mouse is going, like it
Yeah.
fit in on like
It
tracks.
slides right into this track. Yeah.
And then you like rotate that little knob that I'm rotating on the right, and it's like a wheel, and you're turning the wheel. And as you're turning the wheel, the coffee is falling into the container. And as you're doing that, the little numbers above the wheel are ticking up with the weight and the price. So you can get like an exact real time, like weight and price, and then stop like on a dime. And it was so freaking fun. It was so fun to do that and be like, oh, I'm going to try to make it stop at like exactly one or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you weigh it on the scale and you get a little printout sticker and you put the sticker on the container and you take it home. The advantages of this are cleanliness, also the obviously the like customizability for the consumer in terms of price and weight, but you also get they were making a big deal about the fact that you get the branding in cabinet, like in your home, because a lot of brands, they don't want to switch to a refill system if the consumer is going to have an unbranded container that they refill. What they want is that brand, their own branding to be in your cabinet. So they were really proud of like this label on the container that keeps
Mm-hmm.
the brand like in your home. I personally would not care about that, but I guess the brands really do. And so
Yeah.
then
Brands
what
were
I would
happier.
do, yeah, and then what I
Mm-hmm.
would do is I could wait until I had 10 of these things stacked up, or I could bring it back anytime, and you return them in the store, but you don't refill the same one. You return it to get cleaned and you pick a new clean one. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting combo too of like returnable and refillable.
Although you could bring in your own clean one and refill it if you, as the consumer, wanted to hold on to your container longer, which actually saves them on logistical costs.
Yeah.
Um, and that's great. And the branding, just to get back to that, is like shrunk wrap on the package and can be washed with the packaging. So it was solving a lot of different solutions for that retail environment. So
Yeah.
cool. And apparently, it like doing really well in its pilot form because consumers really love the like gamifying. Like, I only want 1 pound of this coffee, or like, I really want to try this espresso bean, but only like get enough for a single serving at home before I commit to buying a full pound. Um, So anyway, it was cool.
Can confirm. So fun. Would buy all of my products this way.
Indeed. And this is basically another fancy smart vending machine for a liquid, for liquids. So it works for any kind of liquid. Right now they're showing like cleaning products, detergents, soaps and things, but it could hypothetically work for like honey and olive oil and other anything that comes in liquid form. Um, Similar vibes of you get to decide how much you're filling. There are a couple different bottle formats that can be uniquely slotted into this particular like track system. So only the right type of bottle can be filled at these containers. You, I can't remember how you fill this one up, if it's a button or not, but you can fill it up. You've got like all of your nutritional or labeling information is available on the screen, as is like the checkout process. And maybe it was on the screen that you select what
Yeah, I
volume
think
you
it
want
was
to
on the
get.
screen. I think this one was automated.
Yeah. But either way, once again, like pick how much you want. You get to have a variety of selections. And this was the brands would decide if there was a washing system behind the scenes that would that the consumer could bring back their packaging and have it washed at store, or if it was just the consumer bought one container and would have that one filled and own that packaging themselves. I want to say they had not in France, like maybe somewhere in Southeast Asia, they had a brand that was doing all of the washing and the consumer didn't have to own the packaging. But in France, the brands that were taking it on were having the consumer own the packaging. But I don't know. I don't know if that's an important detail.
Yeah, this one was
Okay.
interesting. I thought it was fascinating the way that the guy there was emphasizing like this technology helps prevent people from tampering with the machine or like trying to get free product out of it was seemed to be a concern with some of these brands. And so you can see under his hand like the little like shelf thing where you put the bottle. It's a scale so it can weigh the thing at every point. And there was something where it like locks in so the consumer can't like keep their hand on the scale and like make it keep filling. I don't quite remember exactly what he was saying, but it was a whole like anti-tampering element,
Yeah. I
which didn't
think
like that didn't
because
even
this
occur to
is,
me, but that was like such a
mhm.
worry for the brands with going bulk.
Yeah. I think particularly for these like lower cost goods. But anyway, I'm going to move us along since I have a feeling Sydney and I could geek out about all of these things for um, so some of y'all might be familiar with the brand, the reusable packaging company called Loop. They have done a series of pilots in the US, but kind of hit a wall in their success and have since pivoted to France. And what we found fascinating about their solution is they're working with brands there and not having them change their packaging at all. They're exclusively going to or let me rephrase, you can change your packaging, but they discourage it. They actually encourage folks to stick with the packaging that they currently have and are starting with the more expensive packaging items like wine bottles and kegs for small kegs for beer, which apparently is more of a thing in Europe. Um, and any container that is more glass oriented, heavier, and more expensive, which apparently something like 30% of the grocery store floor actually comes in this like more durable, more expensive packaging. And then they are connecting those companies with washing solutions in France, which have cropped up again because of EPR funding being made available to them, and having the brands manage the logistics of refilling any empty containers that get back to them. So realistically, they're the brand fill up a container as if it were brand new. And anytime they get a container back to that brand, it's just an environmental win because instead of it having been recycled, it's now being reused instead. But Um, for all intents and purposes, the consumer experience for the most part is the same, minus the fact that they've got now a higher refund rate on some of these bottles. And for the brand, it's almost exactly the same, except they've like slotted in a washer to manage the washing and drop off these clean reused bottles in the same manner their fresh manufacturer of new packaging might. And Sydney, feel free to chime in with other things.
No, I think that's a good summary. Yeah.
And just to give you guys an idea, by the way, like I don't have a photo here, but or a direct photo, but this is all of the places Loop is operating in France. So like this is very clearly not just happening um in a bubble. It's happening all across the country, which is pretty exciting. Um, Partnering with brands like Loop are these high-end, fancy return reverse vending machines. This is a brand or a company called The Keepers. You'll see also these are all the locations they are across France. These are designed for all of those could be perceived as single-use packaging, but now is being used in reusable settings and collects in this big like opening window and drops everything down from that window into this bigger bin below into a big reusable bin that somebody like a Loop would come and then pick up, sort out into the various packages, and then have lead on to be washed.
And that is a soft drop. So it's hard to see, but in the picture all the way on the right where the door is open, there's like a, yeah, where Suze's arrow is, there's like a tarp basically. So it catches the bottles or containers and then slowly lowers them down into the bin so that they don't break.
Mm-hmm. Basically like not too unsimilar to like our Tomra reverse vending machines that we're familiar with, but instead of like crushing it in the back, it just collects everything underneath.
Yep.
And I just showed like this is like one of many reverse vending machine like systems that we saw across the conference. So clearly a bigger thing there. And then I just wanted to show you guys, we basically, the next, after the conference had concluded, Sydney and I both did a couple of like on-site tours to see it in real life and see what it actually looks like. So I went to a grocery store that Loop was operating out of. Carrefour City is kind of like their go-to grocery store in Paris, a very common grocery store akin to Hannaford's here. You can see we're pointing out a little Loop sticker on the window. In this kind of grocery store, the way that Loop was being presented was kind of like one end cap of all of the packaging that was being sold in reusable or washable packaging. I mentioned that most brands, they're encouraging them not to change or to change very little their branding. He said that Nutella had totally redesigned their jar, as you can see here. And actually, he wants to discourage that because it actually means they're spending a lot more money on a newer, different type of packaging. And the easiest thing and most likely pathway to success is if they don't have to change much of anything and they're, it just like slots right into their existing operations. But clearly some brands and particularly premium brands like the idea of selling things in like a fancier, unique jar for the reuse market. But these were all of the products being sold there. This is like also like a relatively small grocery store. This is not like still a sizable amount of their floor plan. Almost all glass, clearly geared more towards beverage. And there were a couple like lotions and shampoos and conditioners and that sort of thing up here. And you can see all labeled with Loop's branding of blue to signify to the consumer that this has a €1 deposit on it, and you have to drop it in this box, which just happened to be right next to it. So you can kind of see on some of the this is a wine bottle that was the exact wine bottle that brand was already using, but it just had this new sticker on the back. This is a Coca-Cola bottle. You can see how many times it's been washed by like the rings on the bottom and the amount of times it's gone through their washing and processing machines. We did a little taste of Orangina to see how the process worked ourselves. This is also, you can see how the glass is kind of worn down. And then basically you go back to this like little low tech box here. Um, in some stores, you might have that high tech fancy vending machine that I was pointing out that the keepers made, but this is their low tech solution for places that don't, it's not worth having that high expensive machine. They had a little chart at the top of all of the kind of packaging that store sold that had a deposit on it. And basically, you went up to it, you pulled this little lever, a little QR sticker came out, you stuck it on the bottle, took a photo of it in your app, and then dropped it either in one of these bottle dispensers. They had a lower one for kids, which was kind of cute, or in this bigger box up here. And then their deposit would all be returned through the app, not entirely dissimilar to how Clink operates for us, just without the bag. And then we also went to another grocery store where instead of having it like in the end cap, like this end cap, they had it dispersed throughout the store. So in the store, you just in random places have this extra labeling kind of sticking out from out of the bottle, out above the bottles. Again, this was most common in the bottled space. Apparently, this William Peel Scotch whiskey is like the most popular reusable bottle that it's doing the best in the reuse space for Loop, which is interesting. But you wouldn't necessarily, as a consumer, even necessarily know that this was reuse other than, oh, this just has a higher deposit. Good to know as you're checking out. And sometimes it would have unique packaging, a little like sleeve around the neck of the bottle, and sometimes it wouldn't. And now I'm going to pass it off to Sydney because she went to a different tour.
Yeah, while Suze was drinking Orangina, I took the train up north to Lille, which is on the border of Belgium, and I took a tour of a wash hub, which you can see here. Um, I have a lot of really cool videos and photos that we're not allowed to share publicly, so there's only like one slide on this, but tomorrow in our monthly meeting or in a non-recorded setting, I'm happy to show you all more details. They had this big fancy bottle washing machine from Germany, and the way reuse is rolling out in France, as we mentioned, is really all because of the EPR program. But the way that's been going is they've just taken a let's fund everything and see how it shakes out approach. So Loop is one of the dozens of reuse solutions that have been funded through France's packaging EPR system. An entirely different solution that's been funded is through Go Réemploi, which is like Go Reuse. And they are operating this bottle wash hub in the north of France. And they are part of what you may have heard me or others talk about, where the EPR program is rolling out standardized reusable packaging for retail shelves region by region across the country. And they're starting in this region. And there's nothing special about this region that they started here is only a factor of the fact that there were already three existing wash hubs that were ready to go. So it was really just like, where is it easiest to get off the ground? It's here. And then that gives them time in other regions to build up more solutions and then expand. So these are more of the standardized packages, and they're being managed not by Loop, but by Go Réemploi. Go people, I guess, say Go Reemploy, but that's not really right. But what you can see on the right is a bunch of bottles where they are testing the labeling in the machine. So this little dot in the label is a metal dot, and they're testing how that makes its way through the machine and like what happens to those labels. So again, I have other photos I can't show right now because we're recording, but I can show you later. But it was really interesting to see. And we also went to a grocery store, which I think there might be another
Yes,
slide on that.
I
Yeah. So
I
we
do a bunch
also
of
went to a grocery store up in the north, Intermarché, another like just a basic grocery store. Um, and they had both end caps, which you can see here on the end
Mhm.
of the aisle, where they had all the different packages. And then they also had shelf integration, like you can see here. So they were kind of doing a both and in terms of marketing. And that was seemed like it was working out really well for them because just some people pay more attention to what's on the shelf and some pay more attention to what's on the end of the aisle,
Mhm.
and people are different, and so they're trying to capture everyone.
Exactly. And I do think so where Loop is more, the places that I visited were like central Paris, and thus like tended to be much smaller grocery stores, had the end cap exclusively. They were kind of tailoring it based on the grocery size, but I think in like larger, more rural, not that this is rural, but more spacious places where you'd have a larger grocery store, you'd have more of this intermingling of both solutions being used.
Yeah.
And I did want to just flag, by the way, I don't know if this is the same for this one, the Go Reemploy. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it correctly, but at least for Loop System, the brand set the deposit was the solution. It wasn't like a universal like it is here, where it's 5 or 10 or 15 cents. It was
Yes.
some were 20 cents a euro, and one was like a full euro. I think the Nutella one was a full euro. Again, depending on what the brand wanted.
These are, yeah, in this one, they are universal deposits set by the basically I think they're agreed to by the brands, but they're really being controlled by Citeo, the PRO that's running this particular program. So
Mm-hmm.
um, different approaches. And again, they're not treating that as a problem right now. They're treating this as we are experimenting and figuring out what works across the country. And so they're really approaching it with a very refreshing mindset, I found, of like, we're just going to figure out what works. And if something fails, it's fine. And we're going to move on and like learn from it. We love to see that. And they have the same machines. These are also run by the keepers. They just have the purple branding on them to match the branding for that consumers see. And this is the return machine in the front of the store. It has the same little tarp for the soft drop, and you get your little sticker when you return it. And that actually works very similarly to how Clink works here. So you return all your stuff when you're going into the store, you get your sticker, and you can actually immediately take those deposits off your grocery store total. Whereas with Clink, we have to wait till it gets into our account because it's a bag drop. But because this is bottle by bottle, or like thing by container, they have a more immediate, like it immediately goes into your account because there's no like back end opening of the bag that's needed. So that was an interesting thing, but otherwise, same idea. Like you take your little IOU into the store and you can get it back at the checkout.
And then last, we also went to McDonald's because McDonald's and a variety of other fast food restaurants are required in Paris to have reusable on-site dining products. So if anyone or packaging, I mean. So if anyone decides that they're going to eat in at McDonald's and not say this is to go, they still have their like disposable to go stuff. They are required to provide it in reusable containers. So this is they've got like a potato wedge in addition to a French fry there. So we got the potato wedges, but you could also get reusable drink cups. They didn't have them at this location, but there also have been like reusable clamshells for burgers and for chicken nuggets, that sort of thing. And this is just a drop off deposit space where super low tech. There's a trash bin, there's a compost bin, and your reusables go up in this bin up here. And these are all the things that they offer that are reusable containers McDonald's has. Oh, and then one last thing. I did also want to say, tomorrow, you guys are getting a unique sneak peek. But the reason I was there was because I have been working with an organization called PR3 for the last 2 years to find a standard reuse icon for the reuse movement, something akin to the Chasing Arrows for recycling. This ultimately they ran a competition and a global competition to find a symbol and had submissions from across the globe. And we are unveiling that symbol tomorrow to the general public. The hope being that, much like the recycling symbol on any reusable container, reuse drops, collection point or drop off location, you'll be able to see that symbol and start associating and understanding what reuse is by having a universal symbol associated with all the systems you might see. So that if you go to France and see a reuse system, you'll see that symbol in the same way that you'll come home, and if there's a reuse system operating here in Maine, you'll also see it there. So that's what I was doing, and I just wanted to share a little sneak peek, and we're excited to unveil it tomorrow. So hush hush till then. I imagine this recording will be coming out significantly after that. So this is the reuse symbol, and we had the icon meet an iconic location in France. um, and yeah, that's that. And then this is the essential. So Sydney and I also did all of the lovely time in France thing, and we had a lovely time. And we wish you could all have been there with us, geeking out on all things reuse. And yeah, that's our recap from France. I thought I'd just take a pause and say, like, I don't know, Sydney, if you have any immediate reflections or like lessons learned or things you'd like to bring back to the US from that experience, or we can also
Mhm.
just open it to the floor if anyone has questions or wants to share any reflections or thoughts on um, anything we, particularly Reuse Maine, can do with this information.
Yeah, I do have a couple things that I've been thinking a lot about, like, okay, what are my takeaways from this trip? Um, and they're not that earth-shattering, and I actually think that's a good thing. My biggest takeaways, like I went there, I was like, okay, we're gonna spend a week in France. We are gonna see like the mecca of reuse. Like this is where everything is moving the fastest and the most, and it's so ahead of us. And it's not it's not ahead of us. It's ahead of us by a few years because their reuse provisions in their EPR law are a few years before ours, but I didn't find anything magical about France from a reuse perspective, to be clear. There's a lot that's magical about France, but I didn't find anything magical about France from a reuse perspective that doesn't apply to the US or Canada or beyond. Like nothing is special there that can't apply to here. What is catalyzing reusable packaging and foodware in France is policy. That was extremely clear. Like I asked everybody I spoke with at the expo and on the tours, what is helping you expand reuse? And 100% of them said funding from the EPR program. 100% of them. Like that was the only answer they had. There was no like, consumers love it. There was no like, we just get that this is good for the planet. Like they don't care. They're just as crappy as we are. It was just policy, like straight up. And that actually is comforting to me because it gets around a lot of the pushback that we hear with like, oh, but that's Europe. Like, oh, things just work so well in Europe. But like, no, that's not real. Maybe in Germany, and that's a different story, but like France is pretty similar in terms of like they don't have a long history of reuse, just like we don't. It's new to the market. Consumers need a ton of education, just like in the US. Most of them don't really care about the planet. Like nobody was talking about reuse from a climate perspective. I thought that was really interesting. Even the president of France, when he showed up, what they're talking about is market stability and resource independence. They're saying, like, we have to stop importing raw materials from Russia and Iran. Like, that was the talking points. And they were like, we need a stable supply chain. And the only packaging that hasn't dramatically waffled in price recently in Europe is reusable because it's a stable asset with predictable OpEx costs, like just a different system. And those were the talking points. And we can make those exact same talking points here. So, like, I found that comforting as well. Yeah, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
This is a very specific question about EPR funding because up here in Blue Hill, when I was talking to people on the Climate Resilience Committee meeting about getting excited about EPR, there was one comment made where someone was like, oh, so if we have more recycling, then we get more money. Which I didn't have a good response for that at the time, but like it costs money to recycle too. So like I don't know, but that was just an interesting like I don't know why I just thought of that. But yeah, because it's just good to hear, Sydney, that the EPR, which that be is gonna grease the wheels for a lot of stuff to take off here. But and yeah, that was just
Mm.
like a little small town like little thing. Maybe it's not
Yeah.
really relevant, but yeah, I remember when someone said that I was kind of confused. They were really cut. Yeah, so Um,
So
but yeah,
our
I can also
law,
talk to Vanessa about that later. I don't, it doesn't have to be take up any time here.
no, for sure. I mean, that is the connection we're hoping people will start to make more and more. Our law isn't written in Maine exactly the way France's is. I mean, none of them are exactly the same. But we don't have quite the funding for reuse requirement that they have in France, which is a straight up requirement that the PRO must spend a minimum of 5% of its budget every single year on reuse. So they have just literally been throwing money at reuse because they have to. And that is what is funding that is what everybody said was helpful. But behind the scenes, I think what some of those reuse providers don't even understand is they also have reuse targets that they have to meet as the producers in the PRO. And we have those in our regulations here. They're not like the maybe the most enforceable, but they are going to have to get taken somewhat seriously. And so they're throwing money at reuse because they have to, but the reason they aren't just going to do that scattershot forever and are starting to focus on standardized packaging and rolling it out region by region is because they know they have to meet targets and they can't just sprinkle money around the country and call it a day. They have to start coordinating. And that we do have here, and we can support the future stewardship org in Maine in trying to make that happen. And I think that would be the ideal outcome. The other option we have here is that if a municipality did want to start running a reuse program itself, they could get reimbursed for some degree of those costs, a pretty high degree of those costs, with some controls for efficiency. So, like, that's another option, but I think that would be a tall order for most municipalities, but it doesn't mean they wouldn't be interested. So if, for example, a municipality wanted to take on some of the Reuse Me foodware pilot responsibilities and operations after the pilot ends and Maine is finished, that could potentially transfer into being a municipal service that gets money from the EPR program, assuming those are covered materials, but I think they are. So, a
And
lot
it's
of
not to say that the legislation couldn't change. I'm just
right.
gonna throw that out there. There is built-in opportunities in Maine's EPR program that allow the department to do some learning as we're implementing and then come
Exactly.
back to the legislature with some recommendations. So, I mean, our program is still in its infancy compared to like other EPR programs globally. And so just I think the urgency of getting municipalities some financing to help with their diversion was
Yeah.
like utmost priority. And then once we get that, like if we can stop the bleeding on recycling, then we can start, really hopefully encouraging folks to redirect those resources into reuse and like better circular systems in the state. So, and then I think the investment in infrastructure money, there's a lot of potential there too. So, yeah, and maybe this is a reuse main conversation once EPR is like more underway, but like how do we want to better embed reuse into
Yeah.
that system? Because it's hard to conceptualize when we're just talking about the current system is really focused on recycling, but in the future that doesn't have to be the case. And once we like help municipalities just even cover the cost of recycling and activities that they want to be doing that they may not be able to afford to continue doing right now, then we can really start to plan strategically how do we better integrate reuse into the whole system of consumption and disposal and like
Right.
yeah, I think once we see that and the data that will come from EPR related to the volume of packaging, I think is going to be astounding. I think we're just going to be blown away and it'll give us a really good sense of areas of opportunity. So, yeah, there's a lot there, but the EPR for packaging conversation is really a good connecting piece that Maine can leverage for reuse.
Totally. And let's not forget our bottle bill has funding requirements now for reuse
Yes,
as
they
well. So
do. And
another
hopefully we'll see
important
some good
catalyst.
types of investment there.
Yeah. And a lot of what's going on in
Hmm.
France is in the beverage sector because um, because for a couple of reasons, they don't cover food service ware in their EPR law, so there wasn't as much emphasis on food service ware in any of the things that we saw, except they do have a reuse for on-site dining law separately. So that's why we checked out McDonald's and other restaurants. Anywhere you eat on site, they have to give you reusables. That's kind of its own thing. So they're not getting a lot of funding necessarily from the EPR program. But a lot of the emphasis is on bottles, in part because a lot of them are already in glass that's expensive and iconic and good for reuse, and in part because the EU has basically rolled out a de facto EU-wide requirement for every member state to have a bottle bill. It's not quite that's it's they have to hit like a 90% collection and recycling rate for bottles, and you can't really do that without a bottle bill, so they like backed into everyone having to have a bottle bill. So a lot of folks are focusing on bottles for reuse because there's a reuse requirement to that as well. They also have to have 10% of the beverage sector in reusables. So they're like starting there, and then there is some stuff going on in jars and spray bottles and other things. Um, but yeah, it's like you can really see tangibly like the direct result of how the policy is changing the market, which I thought was exciting.
Yeah. That was definitely my takeaway as well. It's like, oh, like shocker, shocker, enabling policy enables the system. And
Yep.
but it was really I wasn't expecting to get hit over the head with it quite as strongly as I was while there. And it was just very clear that like there was it was being taken seriously. It was a thriving ecosystem. It was doing really well, and it was doing well because there was policy force as a forcing function.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, we've got it's not exactly, one for one policy, but we have that policy system here in Maine. So that's exciting. Any other reflections or questions or anything else from our fun little share out?
Super interesting to hear about, and thank you so much for sharing. I feel
Yeah.
like I would have been like a kid in the candy store there, that everything looks so, so cool. So thanks for giving us a peek.
Yeah, for
Thank
sure. No, we
you.
were definitely geeking out the whole time. I had like such a grin on my
You
face.
way too hard. Like, oh my God, look, it's reusable. It's glass and it's reusable. And the amount of people that's like were staring at us like, what are you doing in the grocery stores? And we were like going around like, oh, that one's reusable. That one is. Like, I just pull out my phone and take photos. So I'm like, I have hundreds of photos of these reusable bottles and I don't
Yeah, a
know what to
lot
do
of
with them now.
annoyed people just trying to buy their groceries, trying to like get past us in the aisles. And we were like, but wait, no, look. So yeah, really fun.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, that's all Sydney and I had for our reuse or for the share out. We also wanted to open the floor in case anyone has any community announcements that they'd like to share with the broader Reuse Maine community. If no pressure if no one does, but thought we'd create space if you do.
There
Oh,
is a rubbish cleanup at Middle Beach in Biddeford on Saturday morning. If anyone
Ooh.
is interested in heading a little bit south and checking out a new market, this is their first beach cleanup. I should be there pending the construction. My house projects don't go horribly wrong. But, and you can pre-register on the Rubbish Project website.
Awesome.
Catherine, you're like, nah.
no, no, no. I hit the wrong button. I thought I'm hitting the wrong buttons over here.
And that's a
What is
bit of a drive for
happening?
you, but from
But I
Blue
want
Hill.
to ask Vanessa if there was a bill that was about supporting battery disposal. Did that end up passing?
It did. So
Yeah.
this session, actually kind of to our surprise, we have two new product stewardship programs on the books. So this is kind of an expansion of an existing one. However, it's far more comprehensive. So battery EPR passed. It's got an on-ramp to include embedded batteries by 2030. So that's also really cool. Um, That is actually a first for the country so far. No other state has been able to include embedded batteries at this point. So I expect we'll have to fight on that one to keep that provision in there. But really exciting that we were able to do it. And then we also passed extended producer responsibility law for vapes. So electronic smoking devices are now going to go through the process of getting a product stewardship program paid for by producers. So yeah, thank you, Megan, for putting some stuff in the chat. But it's very exciting. And the vapes one was I wasn't sure how that was going to go. It had a fiscal note because it was going to require some additional DEP capacity. And then it was going to get reimbursed by the producers once it got started. But because of that initial investment, it creates a fiscal note on the bill. And those have not been favorable in the legislature, but somehow it was able to overcome all of that, which is really exciting. So I know they're starting rulemaking for that. They have the department has like a soft deadline to get the language finalized this summer, and then we should see the process start in the Board of Environmental Protection shortly after. So once that language is developed, there'll be time to public comment.
Super cool. Megan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I can say that to add to what Vanessa was saying about the batteries, you might have said this, but I was so busy Googling links that I wasn't paying attention. But the implementation of the program hinges on rulemaking, so we have to have the rules finalized in order for the program to begin. So we do have this kind of baked in timeline that's in the law. I put the links in the chat. But we need to have a speedy process with rulemaking in order to meet those deadlines. And like Vanessa said, I expect lobbying to come back for the embedded batteries, but I'm hoping we can hold firm and at least, if nothing else, keep the requirement for reporting, because right now we have a built-in window where we're going to be collecting a couple of years of data on embedded battery products, and that will be really important for us to determine how to manage those, because it may not be that they all go through a battery collection at a drop-off site. There may be, textile specific programs, or I don't know yet, because we need to collect more data about the kind of products we're dealing with. And then the vapes law is going to have, you might have mentioned this too, but all retailers in the state are going to be required to participate if they sell vapes, and there will be a $2 per vape per person per day, but only up to 2 vapes. So basically you can get $4 a day for returning vapes for recycling. So there'll be some incentives baked in, and there will also be because we get a lot of calls from schools that are confiscating vapes, and they have to manage them as hazardous waste currently. So schools will also be able to manage the vapes that they confiscate through the program, which is going to really help them with costs for managing materials. And
Wow,
I think that's
fascinating.
everything.
Yeah. Do you know when it's supposed to go to the BEP, Megan? I know you talked about the timeline, but
batteries,
yeah.
we're not sure. We're almost hoping. We're probably gonna have to do rulemaking on both of them. We have a lot of rulemaking going on right now, so we're hoping that we might not need to do rules for vapes, but we are in the process of working with our AG on the draft battery rules right now. I wish I had a timeline, but I really
Yeah,
don't.
that's okay. The last time talked to Brian, he said sometime in July he wanted
I
it to
hope
get
so.
kind of up the chain
That's our
for
goal. That's our
approval.
goal. Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was the last I heard. So
It's still our
and then
goal.
once
We're
we have that, it'll
frankly a
go to
little
the
behind, but I hope we get there.
yeah. That's kind of to be department capacity is very limited. So
Yeah, yeah,
but that's all good.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Well, yeah, tell all your friends. If you do nothing else at all for the environment, I feel like this is a pretty important one. Don't put lithium-ion batteries in the trash.
Hmm.
The end. Never do it. They kill
Yeah.
people. Um, I think that's all we had, and I think we're at time. So
Indeed. That is all we had. Stay in touch. Our next quarterly meeting is going to be September 15th. Again, this will be more of a recap of what we're up to, and hopefully we'll find another guest speaker by then to share something exciting.
yeah, thanks everyone. And some of you we hope to see tomorrow at our regular monthly, like actual working session. This was just our fun quarterly update, but see you there. Sweet.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.